It's easy to get money. And the cool thing about credit is, if you invest and you fuck up, you could just let it go to collections and dispute it all out anyway.
Yeah, there's someone that suffers at the end of that system. So.
I was making money and I was paying my bill every single month. So I wasn't just buying like Beats by Dre or dumb
But where
shit.
did it go wrong? Because, I mean, with respect, you're on the other side now.
Where did it all go wrong? See, like poor men.
Step forward if you've made less than 1K in 2024. Less than 10K in 2024. Less than 40K in 2024.
Dude, I thought this was so awkward. I was like, why don't we just put us all on the stool? We'll just say what we make. I mean, it's like, this is why we're here.
Less than 60K in 2024. Less than 300K in 2024. Less than 600K in 2024.
The funny part is that I don't even consider these people on the left-hand side that identify as rich men rich. I mean, maybe one of them is. It's not about people that earn hundreds of thousands of dollars a year, or even millions of dollars a year.
Less than 5 million in 2024. Less than 9 million in 2024.
Is that even a sound?
We're clapping for the rich guy?
Rich people should be taxed more.
I remember back when America was first starting and the taxes were looked at as a privilege. Like, it was something that people looked forward to. People use it as a badge of honor that they had made it to a point where they could use their success to benefit the rest of society. It was something that they used as like a stamp of, I've made it, I've done my part, I've become so successful that now I can give back.
This is still on 1.25.
I purposely don't take advantage of tax loopholes that I could, even though it'd be very easy to, because I would rather that money, instead of it being saved and going directly to myself, I'd rather go to fund school systems and other institutions that can't get funding other ways.
Government is captured by special interest lobby groups that lobby on behalf of their constituents, corporations, and they write the tax code. And the tax code is written in a way that benefits corporations and it disadvantages working class people. And the very fact that you can tax an income, for instance, and not tax what they call unrealized gains is a great injustice in our society.
But then you take a loan against it and then profit from the loan.
You can buy Twitter off of your, with a leveraged buyout by using your unrealized gains as collateral. But when it comes time to tax those unrealized gains, oh, sorry, they're unrealized. You don't have it. It's not actually materially a part of it.
So I don't know that I'm on board with the taxing unrealized gains, but the big thing that had me walking out here is you constantly see that like billionaires, millionaires, et cetera, they pay a lower marginal tax rate than like teachers and stuff. And that
Okay, yeah, and I made a video about this, but we don't have to go into it really too much here because maybe you've seen it, but the fact check is completely, again, we're talking about, when we say the top 1%, we're talking about the top 1% in wealth. We're not talking about the top 1% of income earners. And they're trying to fact check us when we say correctly that the top 1% in wealth do not pay their fair share of taxes. I made a video on that, correcting their fact check. But they're very conniving. You see this fact check and you go, oh, well, they're all full of shit. He's just full of shit. Look at that. Oh, everything's fine. Go back to sleep. Everything's fine. And obviously, that's not the case.
like the biggest thing to me that like never quite made sense. Like, if we're all kind of in this system together, why are we not at least all paying the same percentage of our?
Because we're not in this system together. It's two-tiered. There's a separate separate rules for the rich as there are for the poor, and the rich play by a different game.
Okay, let's invite the disagreeers.
I think they cut out a lot of bangers that I said, okay? I'm not trying to pat myself on the back, but I had some zingers in there. And I've heard this also from other people on the show. They were like, man, they cut out so much of what I said.
The reason why I didn't step forward, which was, should rich people pay more taxes? If I could know with certainty that my taxes, paying more of them, would go to benefit schools or homeless veterans or struggling single moms or whatever the causes are, I'd be glad to. My concern is that once that money's gone, it can go off to fund war crimes in other countries and bomb villages to take their oil and all this other bullshit. And when I keep more of my money, like there's a school maybe like 12 minutes from my house where I paid all the lunch debt for that school. you know, like, and that was fine for me to do. But had I not had that money to pay that lunch debt because it went to the government, I don't know if that would go to that school or if it's going to go bomb some country, right? So that is my sort of like, this is the implication where I don't trust the U.S. government to use the money in the same benevolent way that I might if I had more of it to then do what
that is completely a valid point. Wouldn't you agree? And this is the disconnect. I think this highlights the disconnect because people, often pro-capitalists or apologists for capitalism, will recognize that the government is corrupt and not do the full analysis to recognize who the government is controlled by. They love to blame politicians, but not their funders. At least I don't get butthurt about realistic opinions. Well, I'll take that as a compliment, okay? Do I stream on YouTube? I was for a while, and then I got suspended, and then I have not been able to go live since. But I have started a third channel, and I'm trying to get that feature enabled again. So long story short, no, but yes in the future.
The programs and the passions that I have to help people.
And the reason that we don't trust the U.S. government, because I don't trust it either, is because of who controls the government.
So I did say it. See, I didn't even actually watch this whole thing, but I'm glad they put my answer in.
Who controls the government are capitalists. So it goes back to capitalism. It would be great for our money to be used to fund schools and all these programs, wonderful, but they're not. You're right. They're going to the weapons industry instead.
I think another thing, like a misconception a lot of people have is like the rich don't pay taxes at all. If you look at corporate like payroll tax, like that's like the taxes that we pay. By far in America, corporations pay the most taxes in payroll. That is like what, like for example, but it is coming from other people's checks, but we factor that into their salary, right? We know that we're gonna have to pay taxes on that.
See, this is a big scam. This guy likes to apologize for it. He's like, yeah, well, you know, we know we're using, you know, the workers' money, but I mean, like we pay more of the workers' money than the workers do. All right. And like, that's because we're so benevolent. There was obviously a lot more that I wanted to challenge this guy on. I think his name's Arib Khan, super sweet, like person. And, you know, personally, I really liked him. But I think the things that he was saying, I largely disagreed with. And I thought it was a lot of propaganda. Yeah, I mean, and some of the things that he says, it sort of sounds a bit out of touch. Like a lot of people are saying in the comments that I didn't catch this in the show, but he apparently said, yeah, you know, when I was 15, I was making $8K a month. It's like, who is making, I don't make $8K now. I don't know if I've ever made $8K a month. I couldn't sit still if I was there. Yeah. Kickback that ask about your investments. Those are the dudes that kick back that ask about your investments, right? Yeah. And well, let's see what his full answer is. But actually, I was just thinking about this because just about retirement funds and pensions and the idea that 401k, which we'll get to. I'm getting a little ahead of myself, but let's keep listening.
That's one thing to think about. I do think that the system is set up for the rich to just make way more money, especially with the unrealized gains, like leveraging that.
We like to say, like, we want everyone to pay.
See how they cut people off?
Same percent, same stuff like that.
I get it, though. You got to make a show, but...
But it's not like rich people, massive business owners use less government.
Also, it says he's making less than 10K, but he made clear in the show, I don't know if they say this, but he's actually a student. He's like living off of student loans, basically. He was actually a socialist. He and I were like Marxist. I think he would identify as a Marxist. I identify as a Marxist, but I'm pretty sure he would too.
Services. They are using these roads way more. They are using all these things so much more than the average person who just needs to drive to work. If you need a million trucks going places, like it wouldn't be unfair for these people to pay more because they use more, because they're bigger entities.
I think sometimes people are mad and they're angry about wealth inequality, and they think that like taxing people will solve wealth inequality, and like I think it might solve it on like a number.
I don't think taxing it will solve inequality. It's a band-aid over a bullet wound. Ultimately, I think we have to abolish capitalism. It's sort of like saying in slavery, like if we gave the slaves a day off or two, like, you know, maybe it'll lessen the inequality a little bit. No, it's still that core contradiction of slave owner and slave. And I know that's an extreme case, but there's a similar, if by lesser degree, relationship between corporate executive owners and their wage workers. And we can go into that further too, but I think there's still an element of exploitation present in that relationship. So I don't think taxes are going to solve capitalism. If you're leaving the people in place that are doing the mischievous deeds, they will find new ways. If they control the entire power apparatus, if you will, they're going to figure out new ways to get that surplus value back. And I think that ultimately, our society is set up in a way that, there's two classes and they're both trying to appropriate the surplus value. And one class is completely adept, completely organized, and has all the cards, holds all the powers and all the levers of power. It's been pretty one-sided. Wouldn't you agree?
But I just don't know that that's the right thing.
Okay, so the money that the government doesn't receive by taxing billionaires and multinational corporations, they have to come up with the money still. So what do? They borrow it. They borrow it from corporations when they could have just taxed them. And when you borrow from billionaires and these large corporations, you then have to pay them interest. The government has to pay all this interest on the money that they should have just taxed them in the first place. So that's why you have 30 trillion. I mean, the national debt is a scam in and of itself. The fact that people bring that up as a talking point is ludicrous.
Would you agree with that point? I would, because I said it, but I'm basically recounting Richard Wolff, as well as other, things that I've learned from other leftist writers. I was actually responding to they cut it out, but one of the people there was like talking about how, I don't think billionaires are the problem. So I was like, oh, excuse me. I am sorry, but I need to interject here. He was like, I don't think billionaires are the problem. Think about the national debt, and it's like 30 trillion. He's like, even if we taxed all these billionaires, that's only it doesn't even put a dent in the national debt. And so I had to stop him there and say, no, it does have to do with the billionaires, the billionaire class. Just taxing them a modest tax on their vast fortunes in 1 year destroys the deficit. The deficit is the gap between the revenue raised by the government and the amount that it owes. And so if we just taxed the billionaire class a modest tax for 1 year, it would be something on $6 trillion. It might even be $7 trillion. I don't know, but it's a sizable portion. Okay, and that's the deficit. That's be 1 year's worth of deficit. So, and then think about that is that we're also not getting tacked on with all this interest too. So not only were we crushing the deficit, which lowers the debt ceiling and diminishes the amount of debt that we owe, it also takes away the interest that we would have had to have paid to the billionaire class. So it's a double skew to the owners of this country. Of course, that is unthinkable. There's no way that would be able to. I don't say that there's no way, but there, in this political economy as it exists, I think to try to bargain for that would be impossible. Even billionaires tell us, oh yeah, we should be taxed more. Even billionaires like Warren Buffett tell us, there's a class war and my side is winning. It's literally what he said. And still you have people making $60,000 a year or less defending these. It boggles the mind. The mind boggles. Somebody says, how cooked are we as a country? Judging by, if you read comments on Twitter and comments on YouTube, it seems overwhelming. I'll be honest with you. The amount of brain rot, the amount of the defense of the rulers, the slave owners of this country, the amount of people defending the peasant brains, defending their overlords. With class friends like these, who needs class enemies? But at the same time, I think the good gospel of Karl Marx, as the material conditions deteriorate, it starts to wake up more people. I think Trump is accelerating the fall of U.S. empire. I think, it's going to get worse. It's really quite dark times. We need that global south to rise. The global south will rise again. I truly believe it. I think it's fomenting. Remember, I take heart in the ideas expressed in Marxism and dialectical materialism, that a series of undecipherable, innumerable quantitative changes that exist in the background, imperceptible to the naked eye, will eventually produce a qualitative change. And I still contend that's the law of nature. That is how it's going to happen. So we really don't know how far or how close we are to a political but I'm just trying to give history a good push, if you will. If I can help people get over that same hump that I got over years ago, being apolitical and liberal, and fascists love centrists. Fascists love both sidesers. Fascists love people that sit on the fence and apologize for fascism, because, you know, also socialism, communism, evil. Everything's evil. Well, then I'm so brave, I don't have to do anything. You know, that kind of thinking needs to be, if we're going to survive as a species, I think that kind of thinking needs to be destroyed. And anytime you go through remember, most language is internal to your own mind. You know, most of the language that we use, we don't ever speak. 90% of our use of language is just in our thinking, and only a very small percentage is communicating. When you think through a problem, it's a lot like life and death, because there's these thoughts that are competing to live in your mind. It's a bit like evading death. If you can think through a problem and arrive at a decision, you know, of what you're going to believe, that's a way of staying alive. You know, that's why it's important to really know what you think and what you believe, because you're going to have to die on that hill. Because if somebody comes along and, you know, vanquishes your whole ideology, then it's a bit like death. It is a death, a kind of death. Yeah, fascists love it when you say it's a complicated situation. I saw somewhere that they're afraid of a revolution. They may be taking people's guns. There's nothing more that they fear. I mean, think about what you know, if you want to know what the answer is, just look at what the people in power tell us to hate, you know? What are they so scared of? You know, that's the thing, that they're scared of the public. They're scared of the public organizing. They don't have the numbers. That's the one thing we do have. And, you know, if we only had the organizational factor in our movement, we could solve all the world's problems. And I'm not trying to be, people will label me a class reductionist, but I don't think that's class reductionism. I think what we are calling our attention to is the principal contradiction in the world. You know, it's like you take care of the primary contradiction in the world, then those other secondary contradictions tend to resolve themselves almost simultaneously. And I'm not saying that all of them will solve themselves simultaneously, but you'll at least be in the correct atmosphere that if it isn't solved, it will be solved. And I think that there's no way to solve any of these intersectional problems that we have as a society without solving the first and primary principal class contradiction of capital versus labor. I think our material conditions take primacy. I think the economic mode of production takes primacy over any social or political life. I think I'm basing that on my study of dialectical materialism and also my own personal experiences. You know, scientific knowledge, scientific socialism is what this is. I'm not trying to take away anybody's. I think the working class must be, if we are to succeed, we must have a people, barring a, we need to stay strong and don't trust the.
I grew up in a pretty traditional Muslim household, and it's like very common for like the man to kind of be the breadwinner, and like that's the tradition I grew up. So I have very strong beliefs in that. I do think that there are abstractions, like there are times where women are the breadwinners and vice versa, but I don't think that it should, like for me, like the way that I've grown up, the way that my family's grown up for many years, many generations, it's been a tradition that like the man is very responsible for taking care of his family and the financials of kind of this unit. And I don't plan on changing that. So it's
Keep in mind, this guy is 21. I mean, what did you know when you were 21? Okay. Me being on this show at 21 would be a nightmare. It'd be a show, okay? But he's made $10 million last year. Yeah, I didn't know shit when I was 21. But this guy says he was making $8K a month at 15 years old. He's like, look, I come from a modest background. My mentor was a billionaire, and I made $8K a month and at 15, and I was happy then.
Something I just believe in, but that doesn't mean there's room for abstractions. People can switch it up, but yeah, that's what I believe.
Becoming rich is easier now than it ever has been.
I grew up pretty much.
My point is, who gives a who aspires to be rich in the sense that we mean when we talk about billionaires, you know? Like
Poverty line. So the opportunities that my mom had were so limited to compared to what the opportunities that I have today. And, you know, I was able to, I mean, frankly, make millions and millions of dollars in my 20s because of all the opportunities that we have here in the West and in in America. and especially in modern times, where if you just zoom out, a lot of those opportunities weren't available. Even just like 50 years ago, it would be different.
Yeah, to piggyback off that, I think not only is there opportunity, but the internet has just enabled us to learn anything we want.
I think the fact that you can just be making money off of your laptop just anywhere in the world is revolutionary.
I think there's been a bit of an explosion of non-ethical ways to make money. I feel like that's been a big thing in recent times. Making money off the backs of others has become easier than it ever has been, I think. Like, you can just start a podcast and just like on women the whole time and you'll just like blow up and go crazy. I think like in late stage capitalism, there are so many exploits and things you can do, and I'm not saying you guys have done that.
Yeah, I mean, the premise is you go really either way with them, you know? You can say, in one sense, it is easier to become rich in today's society, and in another sense, it is harder.
Typically, I don't know your stories, but like, you can be a landlord and just start charging exorbitant amounts of rent. That's why it's so unaffordable to live, especially here in California. Like, there are so many evil ways that people can make money that I think it's easier now than it ever has been if you have sort of sketchy morals.
Is a landlord always an evil way to make money to you?
Honestly,
yes. See, I wasn't at the table or at the discussion yet.
Not always, but I would love to see society move away from this, from housing being a form of investment.
So I am a real estate developer.
Yeah. Oh, out. Get out.
And I just bought a piece of land to build a house. The piece of land, just for the dirt, $735,000. Just the permitting, just like literally the fee that I had to pay to get the right to build on that property that I own, 110 grand. It's challenging.
Dude, the risk that this guy has to take, I mean, think about it. He's got to put down some cold, hard cash that he robbed from other people. You know, I would like to, I never did ask him what his business practices were, but he earned every dollar of that. Yeah, I mean, it's like, how do you talk to people that think that private property should exist in the capacity that it exists in? You know, that housing isn't a human right. Things like food aren't human rights.
To offer affordable housing when you're already $800,000 deep and you haven't even put shovel to dirt.
I don't put as much blame on the individual as I do on the systems. I really wish.
I would love to back you up on that. So I actually have a pretty strong thesis on this. So like I bought property and stuff before, and I've realized like the system just favors the rich. And the reason for that is because of interest. Like from this, once again, I tie this back to religion often, but like in Islam, it's like you're not allowed to mess with interest. And the reason for that is because it favors the rich in a way where it pulls away from economic gain from society. And it's like, hey, because I have $100,000, I can pull $1 million of leverage. Well, if you only have 10,000, you can only pull 100,000. And now what's happening today is like these companies like BlackRock and these big institutional holdings, because they already have trillions of dollars, can leverage trillions of more to buy more houses, rising the prices, rising the interest rates for everyone, and you guys suffer the most.
And it incentivizes the most fucked up practices.
Yes.
Like the more you can charge, the higher interest rates you can have, the more you can do, the more you can exploit, the more you can steal,
the more money you have,
the more you get.
The more money you'll make, and eventually you become the bank. And that's what rich people have become, you know? And I really hope that I never kind of go down that path. So it's something that, even as us, like I think when you make money, like you'll see a lot of your friends kind of like you can make a lot more money if you make money. And like you have to really control yourself. That's why I also believe that making a lot of money is actually a curse in a way too. Like there are pros, yeah.
Totally.
You can have a lot of nice things, but you also have a lot more options. A lot more options to do bad things. And they might not be clearly bad things, like taking a loan on something bigger, or like they're not inherently bad, but it's like they can hurt someone on the back end, and I just don't believe in that.
I don't necessarily see interest as evil. I mean, there's a cost to debt, right? There's like a time value on money, as we learned. But I do think, to your point, I think that's where a government's duty is to step in and kind of put those guardrails.
Yeah. Like it's hard not to sometimes, but I do my best not to ever put the blame on the individual, because any individual is not going to be able to change that system that encourages this stuff.
When people learn like to utilize credit in America, I don't know if they even have credit in other countries or if it's similar to America.
They do, but America is by far the biggest credit lender in the world.
So there, right? Back in 2019, like nobody ever taught me like how to go about building credit properly, right? But in 2019, I had friends that was doing drop shipping automation, like Amazon automation, right? So I had a friend, they was all running stores. So she was charging $8,000 to get into this thing, but I didn't have $8,000 at the time. So I started researching credit. I asked questions from all my little rich friends on Facebook. I went on YouTube. So I did research. I went a different route. I got 3 unsecured credit cards for $1,500. I learned about authorized users. But then I think it was within 3 or 6 months, I was able to get $32,000. And then like a year and a half later, I got over 100 grand. That was from having 0 credit. So the thing is, if people actually research credit and learn how to build it properly, it's easy to get money. And the cool thing about credit is, if you invest and you fuck up, you could just let it go to collections and dispute it all out anyway.
Yeah, but you shouldn't think like that.
No, hold on. Let me finish. Let me finish.
There's someone that suffers at the end of that system. So.
I understand. What I'm saying is though, right? Go about it the right way. Be responsible. Pay your credit, because don't fuck up intentionally. But what I'm saying is, it's easy to get the money to invest if you know what you're doing.
Yeah.
But the thing is, if you don't,
it's so sorry. Just to cut you.
Go
It's
ahead.
so easy to get
He
the.
really cares what this guy thinks. He's like, oh, it's the rich guy. No, I don't want to be wrong, but in front of the rich guy. I actually really liked. I like all these people. Okay, I have nothing against them. I thought Asher was really funny though. Seems like a good dude.
People will dig themselves in the hole because they see money.
Well, I agree with you.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying, there's a difference between good debt and bad debt.
Of course.
So I was using my debt for investments. I wasn't just buying like
credit cards though.
I was using the credit cards and then
See,
loans.
dude, that's
rough, dude.
I agree with
20%
you.
interest.
I agree. But
What are you investing in that makes sense?
Well, that's the thing. So I was okay. So like for example, I don't like Amazon dropshipping, right? I was
like,
making money on cashback.
He's like, please don't attack me for my poor mindset. Nobody think that I have a poor mindset, please.
The thing was, I was making money and I was paying my bill every single month. So I wasn't just buying like Beats by Dre.
He's like, the rich guys are ganging up on me.
But where did it go wrong? Because I mean, with respect, you're on the other side now.
I wasn't like with my debt. I was
side
paying
now.
my bill every single month. I've been day trading since 2014. I wasn't like broke. Even like last year, I had my biggest trading day. I made $161,000 in 3 hours.
Brokey.
Passive income, and I trusted some of my rich friends, right, into a bad investment that they ended up rug pulling everybody. And I currently have a lawsuit trying to get my money back. So that's why I ended up over here. I always wanted to be on that rich side for this episode. You know what I mean, right?
I feel like your story kind of epitomizes like my worldview on this question, is that it's easier to make money now because there's so many ways of passive income. And that's kind of what I don't like about it, is passive income doesn't really benefit society. You're making money off the work of others instead of off your own work. So you're not really helping anyone except yourself.
I'm guessing you were on the poor side. Yes, for sure. I stayed down for the poor. I am a poor boy. Nobody loves me. I'm just a poor boy from New Orleans, okay? I'm literally just a roast beef po' boy with some etouffee, some red beans and rice, some seafood gumbo ya. I was the only one to disagree.
We're talking about a societal trend, and you can't disprove that thesis or that premise by citing your own personal story. You have to look at actual data. And when you say it's easier to get rich now than it ever has been, who's getting rich? And if you look at the data, it's the top 1% of the population. And I just thought of some statistics which would help my point, which is to say that, the largest increase.
This was actually the first thing I said in the whole, even though it's 20 minutes, the way they edited it.
Poverty rate from one year to the next happened in 2021 to 2022. The majority of Americans live paycheck to paycheck. It's a very precarious life for most.
Look at how they just come off and they try to fact check me. Now I want to make a video on these too as well, but I haven't yet. But this says, according to the Bank of America's internal data, 30% of Americans, according to the Bank of America, that's not true. The Bank of America says no. 30% of Americans live paycheck to paycheck, okay? It's just 30%, which the bank defines as spending at least 90% of income on necessities. Well, I'm citing, I want to go dig into this, and I will, but there's been numerous reports and articles that I've read where it's in 2021, for example, it was 60% living paycheck to paycheck. In that number is now up to something around the order of 70 to 75. I think the last time I saw the update on that was something like 70 to 75% live paycheck to paycheck. They have their Bank of America source, and I have my sources. But I could do a video on that. And the other thing is says, let me see. Now, I don't know if this is true. It says because I say the poverty rate has never been is the quickest year that the poverty rate has risen the quickest, I should say, in one given year, one fiscal year, was from 21 to 22. And they're saying, yeah, that's true, but according to Census Bureau data, however, the rate is still low compared to data dating back to 1967. Poverty rates were historically low in 20 and 21 due to pandemic-related stimulus. As millions of people were dying over the botched government reaction. 30% of people live paycheck to paycheck based on their own transaction records for bank amounts, which doesn't account for the large percentage of people without bank accounts. There you go. There you go. See, I knew there was some red herring they were trying to get us to chase. And there it is. Thank you, power outage. Honest to God, I didn't watch this because I cringe when I watch myself trying to explain things. So I just don't watch it, but I'm trying to do that now and get over it. But I did try to find clips because I find the utility in that. Obviously, I want to share about it and get people to engage with it and everything. But I didn't watch the whole thing in full. But I did find in one of the clips, which I think has already played, we already went over it. They tried to fact check me on the wealth tax versus income tax rate, which I made a video on. But this is all bullshit. It's like the billionaire fact check. You know what I mean? Like it's fact checking on behalf of rich corporations and billionaires. They're like, no, it's actually not that bad. But you find out it's like they intentionally mislead. Okay, I would just take whatever fact check you get from a media company like Jubilee with a grain of salt.
The majority of Americans live paycheck to paycheck. It's a very precarious life for most of us. And we live in a world where 3 Americans own more wealth than 150 million other Americans, the bottom half of the American population. Another statistic is 8 people in the entire world own all of the wealth, own more wealth and power than 90% of the bottom half of the population. I'm sorry, 50% of the bottom half of the population. That's from Oxfam, and that is 4 billion people. So 8, and this is in 2017, mind you. This is 8 people in the world own more wealth than 4 billion people. And
I didn't finish strong here, but because I've seen this clip before. But I mean, that alone, I think that I always go back to that statistic because I think if you want to show really the height of inequality and how inexcusable, unsustainable this political economy is, that's a pretty big one, a pretty big statistic to go into.
You know, I just think we live in a predatory political economy, and yeah, sure.
So I got a 2-part question for you, right?
Sure.
First part, do you believe in anybody in this half moon shaped circle is better than you?
Absolutely not.
Oh.
See, he's bringing it back to the individual. It's like, well, you think that we had better opportunities than you did? In fact, you know, I should have gone into this a little bit more. I'm going to let it play, and then I'll give you my 2 cents.
So if we had personal experiences that we made different kinds of money, do you feel like that could potentially happen for you as well if you apply yourself properly?
I think that it's not about an individual answer to a systemic question. We're talking about institutions, okay? I'm sorry, think about, you're talking about the housing industry, the real estate, you know, how expensive it is. And, well, the reason for that is because the housing industry has been monopolized by pretty much one corporation, Blackstone, which...
Okay, I may have misspoken, okay? This one, I'm not sure if this is correct or not. I still don't think that this fact check that they tried to get me on here was accurate or disproved my overall point. But I may have misspoken when I said that Blackstone, had a monopoly on the housing industry. And I would like to see what y'all think about this. And this is giving me an impetus to dig a little deeper. But they say Blackstone, an investment firm, owns an estimated 0.06% of single-family housing units in the United States, according to Parcel Labs. I don't know what that is. Blackstone has the 3rd largest single-family home portfolio in the United States. Now, my point is, what is my overall point here? I'm saying maybe I was wrong on the that it's Blackstone that has an entire monopoly on the housing industry. But the fact of the matter is the housing industry is monopolized if it's not Blackstone specifically, Blackstone is obviously in that consortium of corporations that have converged in what's known as alliance capitalism, where you have competing corporations actually in an alliance with each other to corner the market. I still contend that my overall point is correct. And it might be, actually, I know BlackRock is another huge one. BlackRock, Blackstone, but the whole concept of private equity firms taking control of the housing industry. I think what I did was I mentioned Blackstone because historically speaking, back in 2008 when you had the housing bubble that collapsed, that gave the rise for Blackstone. Blackstone, we can go through the numbers. There's obviously a lot of literature on this, but Blackstone was the company that took complete advantage over all these people that lost their homes. And they sniffed it all up. They bought up all the properties. And now, like George Carlin said, it's like they own these corporations, they own all the best land, they own all the best property. That was my major point. And, the premise is becoming rich is easier now. I think any one of these people can become rich. Sure. We're speaking about on an individual level. Obviously, we forge our own history to a certain extent. My point is that our goals, our wants, our fears, our needs, our desires, our motivations in life are determined by history and determined by the progress of social development. What does that mean? Where we're at now, the political economy of capitalism. We are defined first and foremost by our material conditions. And I feel like I'm talking to people that just want to spout off their anecdotes about what, I'm speaking from a standpoint of an entire global population, I'm not saying that I don't have the capability of becoming rich, and I'm not trying to speak that, onto other people saying, you can't do it and you can't do it. I'm looking at data. I'm looking at studies. I'm looking at the inequality. I'm looking at the political economy of capitalism and how it, propagates itself. And I'm speaking from that standpoint, from a macro standpoint. So, and also, what does it mean to become rich? I don't think, what we define as rich is a moving target, So he's trying to make it seem like, oh, you think that you're better than, or you're not as good at, are you a self-defeatist? Are you, if anything, I think I'm better than all of them on the grounds that I'm not competing with the stupid rat race. I'm not a fucking real estate investor. I don't dress like that, and I don't talk like that, and I ain't about all of that, and I don't live that kind of life, and thank God for that, because I would cringe at the sight of me, just like I cringe at the sight of them when I see these people that are, being good errand boys for capitalism, and they're, of course they've thought for themselves, and they have a nice home and a nice family, and they've got millions of dollars in the bank, and that's great for them. But what are they doing? They're they're being predators. They're partaking in this sociopathic, greedy system that's soul-sucking. I don't aspire to do that. I don't aspire to enrich myself at the expense of others. It's not that important to me. I'd rather spend my time making music or being creative, writing, learning, speaking to you fine people, teaching, which is what I don't think people should be penalized because they didn't want to start a business, that they didn't want to incorporate their lives. I don't think people should be penalized for that. I think, everybody should be given what they're due. Excuse me. I think food and water and housing is human rights. I think we're all entitled. If you're on this earth, you deserve your human rights. You deserve a life of dignity, and it doesn't have to do with your position in the economy and what you do for a living. It's a socialist principle, to each according to their need and from each according to their ability. Everybody has their own manifested skills, traits, qualities, characteristics, and everybody's different. And everybody can give. Some can give more, some can give less. And if you give more, you get more. If you give less, then you get less. But you always have what you need. There's always a chance for you to do more and to attain more through your hard work. But that doesn't mean that people that don't aspire to do those things should have to live out on the street. And it just means that a couple hundred people on this earth literally can't go sail their mega yacht to Turks and Caicos. You know what I mean? or take their rocket ship to the moon, or go have a anti-gravity dance in space for 5 minutes. You know, it's like we're not talking about people that have hundreds of thousands of dollars. We're talking about people that have macroeconomic wealth, that are literally capable of moving markets single-handedly and controlling entire institutions. It's nothing to aspire to be rich and to have nice things, but if you want to control the entire banking system, or if you want to own all the railroads, I think you should be taken out back, and because you're a threat to society. No one should have that kind of power. You are evil. You're trying to exploit people. You're trying to control people's lives. It's disgusting, and that's what I rebuke. And I'm not gonna try to enrich myself and be just so I can sell pharmaceutical drugs to doctors so that old white dudes can get boned and drive golf carts.
All the housing, all the private property, and raised all the rents. And so you have to compete with that now. And so, yeah, that's why there is no affordable housing anymore. The homelessness has never been higher. You know?
I want to say I agree with your worldview, like, completely. The reason I step forward for this question is those systems you laid out make it easier for individuals to rise. We cannot all, it's not easier for everyone to make it.
Individuals that have already benefited from generational wealth, from every advantage that
I think there are a lot of
probably,
like scammy ways that poor people
and I'm
can
not
also
saying,
get
you know,
out
if you
there,
got into
there
Bitcoin,
are a lot of like honest ways.
If you had gotten into Bitcoin in 2014, yeah, there's a lot of teenagers that are becoming millionaires, but that's that's such a small sliver, and it doesn't disprove the entire thesis of this.
When I hear that question, right, the hardest thing I have for me is I understand not everybody can get rich, but I truly do believe in America, everybody has the opportunity to be rich. Now, you may have come from a different background where it's harder to come up, you know what I mean?
Well, of the two people in question, you have had a harder time, no doubt.
Wait, because of my past, though. Why not, right?
It's because of your race. It's because of the color of your skin. That is because racism is a systemic problem in America.
I don't see my...
Okay, so this is where people thought I was being, they thought I was being racist for saying this. You know, and maybe I didn't have the best way to articulate that. Maybe it sounded very pointed, but I think the substance of what I was saying here was true, and I'm not speaking. I think if a black man in America becomes rich, I think he's had to overcome more than a white man who has become rich. I don't know how it's racist. People in the comments, in these comments here, there's so many comments, they're saying, oh, he's trying to victimize the black man. Again, I'm speaking about systemic problems in our country, and I'm looking at the actual data, you know, studies that show that black life is criminalized. I mean, all these things, I mean, I think it's very clear that racism is a huge problem, and that is because of capitalism. I think it emerged out of capitalism. It emerged out of the profit motive, okay? That's where racism came from. I don't think I'm not saying to this man that he can never aspire to be rich or to come up and be successful. All I'm saying is that if I'm making a very broad statement, if you're black in America, you have a harder time, generally speaking, you have a harder time becoming rich and successful, whatever that means, and I'm talking about in the capitalist sense. You have a harder time to do that because of the skin color that you have, because you're black, because of the color of your skin, okay? And I don't think that that's wrong for me to say. And it doesn't matter, I'll say it to a black person or a white person or whoever. I just think that that's a objective truism about our society. And people think I'm being racist for this, which I don't think that that's accurate. I don't think that's true. You know, it's funny is people like, oh, he's a professional victim. The blue jean jacket guy is a professional victim. He's gonna stay poor forever. And the funny part is, like, I've had nothing but opportunity after opportunity to climb the corporate ladder, okay? And I'm not gonna bore you with the details, but I've always rejected that path. And it's not because I'm lazy or I have a poor mindset or I have a victim mentality. It's because I didn't aspire to have that kind of a lifestyle. I didn't want to have a business. I didn't want to run a business. I didn't want to work in sales. I didn't even want to get an entry-level position into that. I wanted to teach and I wanted to play music. And I worked hard as a teacher. And I was, when I was a full-time teacher, I was very successful at what I did. I worked really hard at it and I wasn't paid enough. And you hear, ever since you can remember that teachers are not paid enough. Well, it's true. It's a lot of work. You don't save, you just get by. And it's a rewarding profession, okay? But I think they're undervalued, and I think, you know, that it's like, what is the capitalist system call hard work? Raising a child, a single mother raising a child is not considered hard work. It's not compensated. Even though that single mom that's raising that child is literally raising human capital to be spent in the workforce. But that's another story. But, you know, speculating on foreign currencies is hard work, you know. So I disagree with the capitalist value system. And again, I don't think people should be penalized because they want to be a teacher. They don't want to be a CEO. I don't think you should be penalized for that. But in America, you are. And in the capitalist economy, you are. Capitalism loves capitalists, and they hate workers. That's right. Capitalism doesn't want to pay for their upbringing, just wants able bodies. And yeah, that's why they much prefer to just rent you. You know, when you rent something, you don't have to care about what happens to it if you just get another one. And that's how workers are treated. They're rented.
Color is a problem because at the end of the day, though, I still educated myself, I applied myself, and yes, I came up before I got scammed last year, you know what I mean? So as a black person who's at a disadvantage, and let's just say that it really is a disadvantage.
Oh, there is a disadvantage.
It never held me back from doing all the shit that I wanted.
And I'm not saying, wait, can this guy shut up? I want to answer. I'm getting mad just watching this all over again.
Don't have your own personal, you know, optimism for, you know, bootstrapping yourself. I'm saying you're facing institutions that are designed to undermine your livelihood, and that is because of the color of your skin.
I would have to disagree about today. I would say historically in America, certainly. I would say in 2024, 2025, whenever this is coming out. I mean, again, we're all here. We're talking.
Yeah.
I've been able to make $2 million a year since I was like 20.
I made $40 million just in this conversation with you guys. Like, I don't know. I feel like maybe you just gotta like grind harder is all.
Mm-hmm. There's really nothing special about me. I can spot opportunity, and I think that
yeah, you can acquire. You know, you got into the real estate business. Okay, good for you. I never aspired to be a real estate agent.
What you're saying is true, and I was subject to all. Like I've never felt that the color of my skin is a
millions
barrier.
of other people that do not share that.
Yeah, I'm sure,
but you know
exactly. God, this guy on the right is just spitting. Exactly. For every success story of a black man living in late-stage capitalism in modern America, there are millions of failures of people that are living destitute, and that's the point of the discussion. I don't care about your personal anecdotal story, okay? I don't care if you found a room full of these people. It doesn't explain away the predatory institutions that we have that are ultimately raised by design.
And that's the point of the thesis.
I was like, yeah, look, I understand, but I could find you millions, and that's the point of the premise. That's my point.
It's all about belief at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
It's not about belief, see? Like, and then I say, look, watch what I say here.
The prompt was, it's easier.
I said no. I kept disagreeing. I kind of wanted them to get mad, you know. I was like trying to. They told us to be very respectful and like don't get upset. Like just be cool about everything. You don't want to get. Yeah, I said, you know, I don't think that's true. I think he says ultimately it's your belief that does it. And I said I don't think that's true. I think it's the material conditions. Yes. You know, you might have, you know, that internal grind set, that passion, that's fire. It's like, I'm going to overcome these limitations and I'm going to make something of myself. And that might very well happen. But I'm saying that, you know, that's not what the broad thesis of the argument is, that it's harder. Okay, it's harder if you're black. It's harder to overcome those things if you're black. And nobody's saying you can't overcome those things. It's just harder to, for many reasons. Everywhere you look, you know? Society isn't looking over its shoulder at you if you're white.
To get rich than it ever has been. There was a point where someone who looked like me wasn't even allowed to buy a house. Yeah. That's not true.
And there was a certain point that somebody looked like you that didn't, you know, had to wear chains all day, you know? There's been a steady rise in the standards of living, and that's, you know, that's not an argument for capitalism. Any more that slaves had a better standard of living in the 19th century than they did the 18th century. That's not an argument for slavery, just because the standard of living, you know, increased. You know, the ultimate goal is to get rid of the exploitative nature of our society.
So for me, getting out of that circumstance is building wealth. Same thing, even women
I
were
really tried to interrupt him here, but I didn't.
allowed to have a bank account in their own name till like
Sure.
the 70s in some states. That now they can, right? And I think it's easier today.
I guess for him, what is your kind of
See, I don't know what I said there, but you see how they did a hard cut? I definitely responded to all of the things that he was saying.
state then? Like if it's not today, what period in history is
I
the
believe
easiest?
that we live in a class
I think that they cut me there too.
society. There are workers and there are owners, and we are defined by what we do for a living. And if you work for a living, you're in the working class. And if you accrue capital and passive income, like you all were saying, by the hard work of others, then you are a capitalist. If you own the means of production by which workers work those means of production, you are exploiting them. And that's the only way that billionaires are allowed to propagate their wealth.
Let me ask you this. Would you consider anyone with a 401k exploiting people?
No.
Because they hold stocks
401
that are ownership of a business.
See, he's saying, okay, and I wish I had a better answer for this. He's saying, what about retail investors in the stock market? Well, if the retail investors are some of the most scammed people, you know? What is it, something like 80% of the stock market is owned by the top 10% of the wealthiest Americans?
Yeah, that's also an instrument of class war.
The 401k is an instrument of class war.
Yeah, that's, you know.
He thinks I'm crazy that I said the 401k is an instrument in class war. We're speaking to people that don't understand that capitalism itself is class war. But yeah, I think 401k, actually Richard Wolff has a really great video on this, and it's a way of, once again, screwing over workers, screwing them out of their surplus value. I mean, I think the whole wage contract is an instrument of class war. Wage labor itself is an instrument of class war. So the idea that the corporation is now going to say, well, we're not going to provide you with any higher wages. We're not going to pay you in higher wages. What we're going to do is we're going to take some of the wages that you made and we're going to put them in this separate account that you can control to invest in the stock market. And so good luck. Go ahead and gamble in the casino of the stock market as a retail investor, and hopefully it'll work out well for you that by the time you retire, you have enough money to live off of. But if you don't, well, off, you know. My point is that that's another way of scamming the working class, which is an instrument in class war. But I don't think I produced a good answer from that. I should have laid into it.
The idea that, I mean, look at what BlackRock does. I mean, they're gutting workers' pensions. They're gutting your retirement funds. It's not the people that have a 401k. It's the people that are doling out these 401k plans. They are the ones that are taking away from the workers.
So the reason why I disagreed with the prompt was primarily based on something outside of finances, which was time. And so a lot of things that I heard was, you know, oh, everyone has access to a laptop, everyone has access to a phone. It's easier than ever with online sources like drop shipping or crypto or things to get rich in today's society. But with the shrinking middle class, more and more people working paycheck to paycheck, not as many people have the time in the day to utilize those resources or even learn how to use them. For example, like I grew up with a military background. Like my parents were both military. I grew up working for like Chick-fil-A and as a paintball referee. So I was working a lot of minimum wage jobs, but my parents, who were, you know, upper middle class, gave me the opportunity to learn how to use a computer in my downtime or take a couple months off from working to be able to learn how to do social media, which is what I do now. And now I have the opportunity to make millions, and so it'd be easier for me to sit here and say, wow, it's easier than ever to make money in today's society. But if you even look outside of America as a country and at the global economy as a whole, there are so many millions and millions and millions of people who are sitting here going, what do you mean it's easier than ever to make money? I'm watching the upper 1% get richer and richer, and I'm still here struggling to pay rent and make food every day. 100%. And so that's why I was like, I don't think it's easier. Like, sure, there are opportunities and a lot of like more people have the opportunity, but overall, like there's a lot of inequality there that makes it more difficult than ever.
The largest transfer of wealth ever in human history has occurred in the past 40 years. $50 trillion has been basically robbed from the working class, the bottom 90% of Americans, to the top 1%. And that's another example of the disparity, the inequality, economic inequality.
Whose fault do you think that is?
It's the fault of the people that are in charge, obviously, the people that control the economy and subsequently control the government. It's the capitalists, it's the 1%. That is their function in society, to be parasites upon the majority of the population.
There's one thing I have to just disagree on.
Sure.
As far as wealth inequality goes, there's no question. Today, it's more exacerbated than at any other time.
Yes.
There's people that have hundreds of billions of dollars, and there's people that have nothing.
Right.
So that is absolutely true. I think when I sort of zoom out and I look at the history of the world And the fact that we all have electricity and running water and, you know, like heat in our house, if we're lucky enough to have that, I just think I can't look at a time in history where there was a better time to be alive. I mean, like, yeah, times are hard now for sure, and I don't want to sound condescending.
As long as you're not Gazan. Yeah, I always love this answer. Like, well, you know, we have electricity now. We have better technology. I mean, all these things that you love about our society were publicly funded, were innovated in the state sector, were used, were innovated and researched and developed and funded by taxpayer money. And it's great. Great. I love iPhones. I love having electricity. You know, that's a point for socialism, if you ask me. That's a point against the private sector. But just to say that the standards of living conditions have improved, and so, hey, everything's fine. I mean, like I said, you know, slaves in the 1830s were living much better than the 1730s. But we don't say, hey, slavery's all right. And, you know, another thing I think is important to make when we're talking to these libertarian types and these pro-capitalist types is to say, we are objectively looking at history and how history develops, and we can recognize, just like Marx recognized, the utility in capitalism when it came to be. Because, as I've learned, through every historical development, every revolution in the mode of production, it always advances. There's always that progress because there is a proliferation of economic production. I think I can say that better, and I'll try to. But in other words, revolutions don't happen because like there's going to be less commodities. Revolutions happen in the economy because it's a transcendental shift to like more a proliferation of more commodities at an easier cost. You know, it just becomes more viable, more and the relationships to the old modes of production are no longer viable. They no longer work. They actually stagnate. They hinder the progress of human development. And so once that becomes outmoded, you have a new mode of production that prevails, a rise of a new class, and then a new relationship, comes into play. So let's take that specifically. You can think of feudalism and the transition from feudalism to capitalism. So what am I trying to say? Capitalism at one point was a revolutionary progression. It did, the Industrial Revolution, in other words. That's really what capitalism produced. The fact that the means of production was no longer primarily land, it was now machines and factories. That became the means of production. So then the merchants and the merchants and manufacturing class took power. They abolished feudalism. So I think abolishing feudalism had its improvements. Serfs were no longer tied to the land. They had more mobility. There was, a general furtherance of human rights. But we're just being objective about this, So capitalism served its historical purpose for the time that it prevailed. But, we also have to be mindful of how things evolve and where we're at now. And I think it's quite correct to say that capitalism has passed its prime and it is becoming outmoded and superseded by a new rising dominant class, and that is the proletariat. And the proletariat is now the revolutionary class, whereas in the age of feudalism, the capitalists were the revolutionary class. The bourgeoisie, the merchants and the manufacturers represented a shift in the power dynamic. They were the ones that were the subordinate class to the feudal lords, and they were able to overthrow them. And that qualitative shift meant that there was a revolution and an exchange of power, right? So as soon as the merchants and the manufacturers, the bourgeoisie, became, they abolished the aristocracy, the feudal lords, the monarchy, because that was like a close connection there. They once they settled into their newfound fame and glory, they so to speak, they became reactionary. Okay, because now they were always exploiting workers, but now that became the dominant principal contradiction, was the workers versus the owners, the bourgeoisie versus the proletariat. And so now the next phase of social development is the proletariat doing what the capitalists did in the 18th century, which was to overthrow capitalism today. Does that make sense?
Someone on this side of it saying that life is easy, because I know that life can be hard and it was difficult for me growing up. But there was a time in history where you get your hand chopped off for like stealing an onion. like that doesn't happen anymore. Like, at least not in America.
I think both can be true. I think, the base standard of living.
And now you just get drone striked while you're at a wedding. I mean, the guy really. I tried to make this point. I don't know if they showed this, but his level of concern is very narrow. It's at one point he was like saying, "Hey, America's great. Like, we were the land of the free, and like we were the richest country." And I said, "Why? And why is that? Well, how? Yes, you'd almost expect that, right? When you rape the entire world, you would expect America to be the richest country. And if it's not, that'd be like, damn, America, what the fuck's wrong with you? You did all that shit, and you're not even the richest country in the world. Like, yeah, when you rape and pillage and plunder the entire third world, the entire global south, you tend to enrich yourself at the expense of others. That's not an argument for capitalism.
Higher than it ever has been, while also it being harder than ever to escape from the place that you were born into and the kind of like economy that you are a part of.
I don't think it's like you have to pick either or. I think it's easy to be poor and it's easy to be rich. Like, it's like kind of like this.
That's what I agree
that's
with,
like
100%.
the thought.
Both sides, guys. It's easy to poor and it's easy to be rich. If it was easy to be, I think I made this point too. I'll shut up.
Easy to be rich, then everybody would be rich. If everybody could be a billionaire, then there would be no billionaires.
If it's easy to get a six-pack, which it is, it's just consistency. Why doesn't everyone have a six-pack? I don't have a six-pack.
Here's the thing too. Like, his analogies about the six-pack is there are people who genetically do not have the ability to have a six-pack, and that's how I see it. There are people who just do not have the opportunity, do not have the resources to just be able to just make money.
I think not everyone statistically.
Somehow I was like, oh, but, and then you cut and. Nothing.
Successful. You have to believe it though. Like, if you're ever going to become successful, you have to believe it. But not everyone's going to, like, even like the six-pack analogy, right? You have to actually believe that you can get a six-pack, even though you can't.
I think that's the part that I really agree with, which is why I stepped forward. I feel incredibly lucky to be in the West, to be specifically in America, to be in modern times. We have so much opportunity in America. I'm not saying that it's not complicated or challenging or that times aren't tough. I'm just lucky to be here, and that, like, this is. Again, just zoom out in the West, in America, it's such an incredible time to be alive.
This is such a fallacy because, like, yes, of course, the United States is the greatest, most wealthy country in the world because we've robbed the entire world.
100%. I'm not disputing that at all.
Yeah, no, I'm saying you're not. I'm just saying you're accurately saying we have the best opportunity in the world, and I'm just saying those are ill-gotten gains.
There's no such thing as an ethical billionaire.
You cannot become a billionaire without exploiting people in the process.
Absolutely.
So
yeah, it's impossible to work hard enough to be a billionaire. You will have to extract the surplus labor value from other people. It's not possible to do that at all. Like, I think the closest, we have a weird almost exception, but not really exception in modern society with celebrities, where people actually like just prop them up and do that, and they're not necessarily exploiting others themselves. And so that's like the only thing I think where it could be questionable.
do you have an example, like a specific example of someone that's a billionaire?
No,
that might be?
that's my thing, is that they don't reach billionaire status, because billionaire is so insanely high.
Right.
I think you could be like 100 millionaire ethically, maybe through that specific mean, but billionaire is so astronomically high, it's impossible to get there without exploiting others. I look at someone like Taylor Swift, who I'm a huge fan of, love her, but her capitalist business practices are insane. Yeah. We're charging like $40 for little things, and we're exploiting people in all these other ways to like make these things for so cheap and do this and
Yeah, you become a billionaire by investing, and you don't. It's not through hard work. Nobody becomes a billionaire through hard work. You get it through exploiting people. You know what the difference between $1 billion and $1 million is? It's about $1 billion. Yeah. I mean, nobody really understands how much wealth is is $1 billion, and to think that there are people in the world that have hundreds of $1 billion and they're on their way to becoming trillionaires. The disparity has never been greater, and I don't believe that there's any way you can acquire $1 billion and without being unethical, and I've yet to hear a strong argument in the opposition.
No, Morflex, I am confident in what I said, and I will stand. That's why I'm here watching it with you. Okay, I wouldn't try to I wouldn't post up on my L's for the world to see. I think it's funny that it's, I get a lot of hate in the comments for my performance here. Okay, I didn't blow anything. I'm doing a good job, though. I think layers of dissonance, many are too deep to penetrate in the length of this program or depth of discussion. That's fair. I appreciate that. Patient and deliberate. Thank you. I'm stern, but I'm fair, chat. Stern, but fair. Okay? I know. They're one of the guys, the rich dude, Arib, he was like, I don't know why you're getting so much hate in the comments. You didn't deserve that. And I was before I'd even read anything. Yeah, well, I'm used to it. So I said what I said. I like that, gamer.
People in a position to where they can, I guess, provide for the life that they want and the people they care about, so they can accomplish their goals through the opportunity you provide for them, and you're able to accomplish your goal at the same time. Why is that a bad thing?
Well, when I use exploitation, I use it in a Marxist sense, where it's just the extraction. Like, you are exploiting their labor in the sense that their labor is worth a certain amount. You're not paying them what that labor is worth. If they generate $30 an hour for you and you're paying them $20, that's exploitation. If you are taking that $10 and putting it in your pocket.
But then how do you pay for the lights, like the cameras?
I think that surplus labor value, I think workers should have a say in how it's used. And that's my biggest problem, is that the workers don't have a say.
Is there a sense where we could maybe raise the minimum wage to a certain level to where it's not seen as exploitation?
The very concept of earning a wage is exploitative by design, because you could be, like he said, you could be producing all this value as a worker, but you're capped.
What if you get stock in the company? So it's pretty common in the tech place to get restricted stock.
How does a company raise the shareholder price of their company? How do they do that?
Make more revenue.
Right? Usually there's traditional finance metrics like revenue or
traditional finance metrics, of course. You got to look at the traditional finance metrics, dog. It's all there, bro. You got to study economics 101, bruh.
But in general, it's more people are buying
revenue.
Okay, so how do they generate revenue?
By selling
goods and services.
How do they make goods?
Using human labor.
There you go.
I never saw.
Boom! It all comes back to labor. I'm like, when he said that, I was like, thank you. It all comes back to labor. Don't make me rant about labor, folks. I will do it, okay? I will give you my rant on labor.
That my life was worse off if the guy who started a restaurant paid me a wage to work in the restaurant and he made more than me. It never bothered me. If the owner of the restaurant was like, yeah.
There were slaves in the 1830s that didn't think they were being exploited as well.
Except it was my choice.
But also,
it was my choice to go get that job and earn a wage.
I don't, and he accurately, watch the homeboy in the teal sweatshirt to the right. He's going to say, yeah, but he's going to say the system made you do that.
I'm going to say the system forced you to do it.
But no, also the person paying.
He's right, though. I probably would have said that. You think that it's your choice, but you're being coerced under, and I don't know the specifics. I mean, maybe he, what was his choice there? Was he doing it to help his family survive? Okay, well, if he's doing that, like, is that really a choice there? Is that free will? What were his motivations? Was he well off and his parents made him go do it because they wanted him to learn hard work or something, or how to get exploited, and so that they'll never, I was told to do that too at a young age. Like, you need to go get a job so you feel what it's like to be on the low end, and so that you don't want to be there, go experience what it's like being a dishwasher. And it's kind of sick when you think about it.
To do that was not a billionaire. A billionaire takes that to the most extreme level, where it wouldn't be taking $1 here of surplus labor value and doing this with it. It's extreme greed, extreme wealth hogging to get to that level.
So I personally know many billionaires. One of my closest mentors,
How many billionaires do you guys know? says one of his closest mentors growing up was a billionaire.
Sit 2 desks away from me. His company IPO'd. Currently, it's valued more than Lockheed Martin, Nike. It's called AppLovin. It's worth like $158 billion, right? This is the most kind, genuine person you'll ever meet.
He's the kindest, gentlest billionaire that you could possibly think of in the known uni, okay? There's nothing more kind and benevolent than this billionaire, okay? Personally, he's got kind eyes. He's muy simpático, and God love him. He's a nice family man, too. He's good to his children, okay? Therefore, capitalism good. Thank you. I'm going to go home now.
Ever since he's made money, so he like has a crazy story. He started working when he was 14, 15, made a ton of money. And it was the same thing. Like my story is very similar, where it's like I started working at 15. I was paid $8K a month. And
So you heard that? This guy, who's certainly not out of touch with reality, said, look, I started just like this guy, okay? I started a job when I was 15. I made $8K a month, okay? I was in the lowest of the lows. I was wage slaving it at $8K a month. I didn't know what I was doing. Like, damn. Why are you going to go and out yourself like that, big dog?
I loved it, not just because of the money. I knew I was making someone way more money, but it was the fact that I could learn from them, like learn how to get into that position. So the system never.
Yeah, you wanted to be the exploiter and not the exploited. That's so brave of you. So courageous. He doesn't hear it that way, you know. You have to, and remember, this guy is 21 years old and he's already seen an obscene amount of wealth. So his worldview is already going to be completely warped. He just thinks that this just happens to everybody. But so I would think we would go kind on him for being so young, but he doesn't see what the immorality in what he's saying.
Bothered me in that sense because I was like, I can beat that system.
If there's no such thing as an ethical billionaire, where is that limit? Can you be an ethical millionaire? Can you be an ethical 100 millionaire? Like where is the point at which suddenly I'm now unethical?
That's a great question. I couldn't give you a number. I think $1 billion is way past it, though. I don't think it's anywhere near $1 billion.
I think if you earn $1 billion through, the stock market, I think that the stock market itself is a scam, and it's a scam it's a grift that works against the working class, and it's a way to the stock market itself is class war, and I think that's the only way you can become a billionaire is through investing, and investing in large amounts is the only way to earn that much in passive income. 100 million is enough. I don't know. You guys got any good points here that you could make to say like what is the cutoff point? I just think that in communism, in socialism, you can't exploit people. We're taking your slaves away, Chuck. Okay, the only thing you can't do is exploit people. If you're exploiting people, doesn't matter for how much, you can't do it. And I'm not saying that it's going to be a perfect utopian, everybody, but it's going to help a lot to take away the parasites. Okay, to take away all we're doing is trying to take away the parasite class. And what's funny is that people can tolerate the idea of delegation and democracy in our government, but when it comes to the economy, people just think it's unfathomable and it's anti-democratic to arrange the economy in a democratic manner. It must be like a fascist enterprise. We must have fascism in our economy, otherwise we don't have personal liberty. No, personal liberty has nothing to do with the ability to exploit people. Human rights do not infringe upon others. They're inclusive, not exclusive. Unlike property rights, when you have the right to property, you have the right to exclude others from that property. And in the age of monopoly capitalism, it's a small sliver of a fraction of a percentage of people that own all the property and dictate all the terms. Well, I think we could, the point is like, we're not spelling out a perfect, Marx, as has been said, it's not like I've read everything that Marx has ever written, but what I know about what Marx has written is, and I've read some, I'm not saying I haven't read anything. I've read, obviously, the Communist Manifesto and the Capital and Labor. I've read a little bit of Capital. Obviously, I'm not crazy. I didn't read the whole fucking volume. But I dropped my phone. But I will say that Marx had a few scant words about what a socialist society was going to look like. he spent the bulk of his writing talking about the present economy that he was living in and the exploitative nature of it. And all we're doing is saying, here, these are the problems, and this would be how to fix them. We're not spelling out a future society where all the problems are, magically solved. You don't expect that, the same people that say, well, capitalism is the best we can do, are the same people that say, oh, you just believe in a utopia. You just think there's a socialist utopia out there. Well, you don't put that same standard applied to capitalism, but you apply it with socialism. And, it's a double standard. And I think if you think that it's just human nature is just to be greedy, we all want to be like little self-enriched capitalists. If you really believe human nature is that, why do we need a political economy that enforces it? Why do we need laws? Why do we need armies to stop people from being socialist around the world? If it's human nature to be greedy, then why mandate it to be greedy? Why do we need mandates saying you need to be greedy? If a CEO does not act out of short-term profit accumulation for his company, he is fired, and at worst he is jailed, because it goes against the law to not think about enriching the corporation. And that's because the law is written by capitalists.
I can't give you a number, and I don't think every millionaire is an evil person. 10 millionaires an evil person.
I have a friend who's a solo founder. So he's in the in the tech space, and he on freak accident got really into AI super early, like years ago, right? And him by himself, he's sitting with his computer, he's like in his 20s, and he codes some shit, and he creates a company, and now it's suddenly IPOs, and it's worth $1 billion. He didn't do anything. He didn't go out and say, you know what, I'm going to make this $1 billion, and I'm going to fuck over everybody in the process. He's doing something that he loves, and now suddenly the world says, and the stock market specifically says, your thing is now worth $1 billion. Now it is suddenly my friend now is an unethical person, and he has to hang himself. Like, what does he have to give away his money?
No, and we're not talking about individuals. We're talking about the system. It's like, I'm sure that there were benevolent slave owners in slavery, and I'm sure they treated their slaves very well. That doesn't mean that it doesn't mean that their institutional role wasn't evil. Okay, they play a role in we're incriminating the system itself, not individual actors within the system. But yeah, I think that even on an individual level, as soon as you have that amount of power and wealth, you become part of the problem. Doesn't mean that we're going to go, in China, maybe they would hang you if you had billions of dollars.
He's evil. Like, where's that point?
It's easier to make money if you're a white man.
Broad statement. Obviously, it's not. There are people that aren't white that make a lot of money, but I think statistically, generally speaking, it is easier to make money if you are white. It's easier to be advantaged by these institutions that govern public life if you are a white person, specifically a white male. But goes back to systemic racism. The institutions are, capitalism has given way.
I sound like Elon Musk right here. What the fuck? Get it together, dude. Fuck.
Like a byproduct of capitalism, in other words, is white supremacy. And, we're in the United States of America. We've had, this country was founded upon slavery and the genocide of the Native Americans, the slavery of African Americans. And that was by white people.
Yeah, I think when you look at the statistics, you see certain demographics succeeding more than other demographics. Mm-hmm. And you can either look at that and say, oh, there's something inherent about those groups, which is just racism, or you can look at that and say, there must be some societal factors that lead other groups to excelling more than others.
And another point is there have been studies made on, the eligibility of people to acquire a bank loan, for instance. And statistically speaking, it's far easier to acquire a bank loan if you're a white person than a black person. Mm-hmm. And that's just one of the examples. We have it's easier to get a college education if you're white. Yeah. it's easier to make money if you're educated. Most white people, have a clear, it's all about equity.
Yeah. I do want to make one thing clear about my worldview, though, is that...
I'm going to join you guys after if that's okay.
For sure. Is that I think on the left, the left of politics, sometimes it comes across very defeatist when we talk.
But you'd think I was high by judging by my fucking eloquence. Fuck you, Paul.
And I never want to be like that. I don't want to say a person of color can't do this, can't do that, because that's also literally just racism, and people on the left do that a lot, sadly.
But the prompt
you can succeed, but it's just, it might be a little harder, and that difficulty can appear in a myriad of different ways.
It's like the third time I said, yeah, but the prompt was very broad.
And I just think statistics...
Thank you, Zanine. I think so too.
...show certain groups are more successful.
I think one thing too I wanted to add that brought me out here, I don't know that it's tremendously more difficult, but it's definitely more difficult, and I think stats show that. And a big thing to me is so much of personal wealth is your home, and there's a huge racial net worth gap, and a lot of that is because of access to property ownership, and that's a big thing that I think stored capital creates more capital.
Right. So, I mean, we come from a society that segregation was legal 50, 60 years ago. I mean, that's just a few generations ago. We're still feeling those reverberations, and white people want to protect their property, their wealth. Wasn't there the whole thing of white flight, in the 60s, or as soon as society was desegregated, white people basically said, we're going to take all our capital and move out to the suburbs, and we're going to defund public institutions. We don't have any.
What was that sound? Did somebody just cheer with some biddies? Guys, subscribe to the stream, okay, if you know it's good for you. If you like what you see here, okay? And I know you do, because I'm so handsome, and I smell really good, and I'm good looking, and people like me.
Responsibility to them, and I just think it's pretty fairly evident at this point that systemic racism is an issue, and to acquire wealth, it's far easier if you look the part.
Do you think that will change as time goes on, though? Because I think we are for sure trending the right direction, and that's why I hesitated to come out here. But then bringing up the points of historical wealth, and then wealth building off of historical wealth.
I think it's headed in the right direction for sure. I mean, I believe anyone can absolutely succeed in America. Some people will have a harder path than others, but I believe anyone can. Sadly, I don't think everyone can. I feel like that is contradicted by capitalism, but I do think anyone can succeed despite their circumstances.
Maybe back in the day, I don't really believe it, and I guess it goes up based off of personal experience. One thing that I personally hate is this whole victim mindset that a lot of folks in our community especially have. I hate that with a passion, because as a black dude,
I can understand that. I can understand that.
How I present myself. Some people in the comments gonna talk shit. I already know.
Yeah, they're gonna talk shit about me, not you.
You're right. But my whole thing is, I've had so many jobs, and we were speaking about unemployable and whatnot, right? But if you looked at my resume, it's crazy. I've been a flight attendant, I've been a truck driver, I've been a perfume salesman, I've been a street performer on the Las Vegas Strip. I used to work background in porn. As a black dude who's done a whole bunch of shit, it's hard for me to think that I'm at a disadvantage when I've done more shit than the average person has.
I agree with you that everyone should have the mindset that they can succeed. I think that's something on the left that we don't communicate enough, is absolutely have the mindset that you can succeed, but that doesn't mean that these systems aren't in place.
And let's say the systems are in, right? Because it was worse back in the day, but let's just say the systems currently are in place. I just think it's a belief factor. If you believe oh, I'm black, I can't do shit, you ain't gonna try.
Yeah, and nobody's saying that you're making a straw man of the points, essentially. Nobody's saying that you shouldn't. I already addressed that earlier in the episode. I was like, I'm not saying that you can't have your own optimism and that you can't be successful. I'm just saying that the institutions are designed to undermine you. And if you are able to do those things, it's most likely because you were able to overcome those adversities, which a white person does not have those impediments to success. They're not the same. There's not the same lived-in experience, okay? And I think it's to say that it's all the same. I think it's racist to try to equate them as being the same, because you're not actually noticing the disparity. You're saying, oh, well, then I guess if everything's the same, then the fact that there's more black people that are poor and in jail, it must mean that there's some sort of racial component as to their, their lot in life. And there is, but it has to do with the evils of the system, not because of their own limitations as or in their own abilities. They haven't even had the opportunity really to historically allow their abilities to develop. And that is borne out by history, man. Okay? Look at what we did, There's never, I don't think there's been a single more harmful thing than the transatlantic slave trade and the effects of Western European colonialism and even pre-colonialism, all of those effects of capitalism essentially onto the black race.
Tend to demotivate people, and then that causes lack of action. And it's like
lack of belief.
It's like, for example, like I look at everything as like I only look at the advantages. Like
I only see the advantages, man. I'm just like a free thinker. I only see the positives. Like I don't even think about the negatives. Like I remember when things were tough for me. I was 15, making $8K a month. It was really tough. And then I had a bad day one day. I was like, let me call up my billionaire friend and give me some financial advice. And that's what I was like, you know what? I'm just not going to focus on the negative. Like such a position of privilege, right? To just say, well, I'm just not going to even think about it. You're just to be curated on this show. Obviously, you're not a representative of the pulse of the culture.
Cut out the disadvantages that I have. Maybe I don't even have many, but it's like I hyper focus on like, okay, what advantages do I have and how can I use them? And that actually promotes to good action and good results.
That's on an individual basis, and I would agree with you. For sure, everyone should take what they got and make it better. We're talking about society as a whole, though.
I just think you should take that with a grain of salt, though, right? I think like it's like a lot of people don't take it with a grain of salt. Like I have friends that are like, I'm gonna like figure it out one day. Like like it is what it is. Like you're rich. Like you figured it out. Like I can't do that. Like no. Like
nobody's saying we should be apathetic about our situation, but we can recognize the material conditions of our society and the institutions that
of course,
govern public life.
The way you beat that is like you focus on what are the advantages that you have and how can I act on those advantages.
Keeping in mind the year that we're in, unless there's something I don't know about, maybe that's true, there's no legal system that says you are prevented from this opportunity because of your race.
If anything, it's the opposite. We have the Civil Rights Act of 1964.
The Civil Rights Act of 1964. I see you, Civil Rights Act of 1964, and I raise you. I raise you freedom.
I see black people succeeding lets me know I can too, man. I might be at a disadvantage, but I'm gonna grind it out and do my damn thing so I can get there too.
It's just like I'm trying to think outside of the bounds of just like this conversation where we're taking place in America, like looking at society as a whole. Like, if I went overseas, like I'm going to be at a disadvantage to making money. Like we're not talking about being rich, the prompt was making money itself. And I think overall,
I'm so ashamed of what I'm hearing. I've got my head down.
Cultures, tend to prefer their own. And that's just across the board. But I don't think that means that necessarily like it puts you at a disadvantage. But at the same time, there are certain advantages that I have because I'm white in America, and I'm very aware of that. But when it comes to like the baseline of just making money, when it comes to like, okay, being like super successful, like we can argue about systemic things that are holding people back, and we agree and disagree. But just the baseline of making money, I had to disagree on that.
Being a white straight male in the United States of America as opposed to a black, queer, female. What is the society set up? Who is the society set up for?
And even making it more personal, like when people are in positions of power and able to choose who they surround themselves with, they tend to go after people that look like themselves in some way, shape, or form. Right. It's why you see like such a large like boys club at the top of like the Fortune 500 CEOs. It's why they make such a big deal about like women in places of power and women who do these things. It's because by and far across the board, it's a lot easier for the guys to be like, that's a man like me. We have a background similar.
Dude, you know what? Like I think America is such a big country that you cannot just generalize that rule all over the country. Like small cities, small towns with different cities, different states, everything that changes like vastly.
It's a big country, but there's only two classes. There's the 1% and there's the 99%.
I am happy.
Yeah, we're all happy. It doesn't matter if we're rich or poor. We're just happy dudes.
My college sweetheart, we've been together for 13 years. I have a healthy son and a healthy daughter. And honestly, everything else is just kind of bullshit. Like once you have that, the people that you love are doing okay. To me, that's ultimate happiness. And there's nothing there's nothing else that I want other than that. So I'm very happy.
I would have said, like, you asked me this question like a couple months ago, or like maybe a year ago, it would have been a different question. That's why I hesitated.
Yeah. It depends on who you're with. Yeah, I think that, like, who you're with in the very close environment is a huge factor that's going to change that. But I could say that I do live paycheck to paycheck, but I know that I do something that I absolutely love and I'm so passionate about. And
what do you do?
I'm a filmmaker. This year was when I just decided to study acting, and that was truly, like, that's my true passion, to be honest. Like, I love shooting as a hobby, but like, how many people can go to work with a big fat smile on their face? You know? So it's like, how many people can do that? Like, dude, I know people who've been doing the same job for 30 years, even though they're making an amazing paycheck. Everything. They're like financially, stable, everything. They can go to Saint-Tropez and they just like, it's a beautiful life, right? But he goes to work
not a
and he's
good
like,
look. Stop it.
God. That for me is just like,
I think I'm eating my
no
words.
paycheck is worth that.
Yeah, I would agree. I kind of do something I enjoy on a daily basis too. I help sort of serve the underserved and work on an investing platform that anyone can use. And I just moved to California, so there's a lot to be happy about.
Same.
Yeah.
And I teach, and I love what I do. So,
well, and to what you're saying too, it's really the people you surround yourself with. It's something like you're the average of your best 5 friends or something along those lines. So I've got a lot of good friends and close family, and yeah.
In the United States, I think we have a lot to be happy about and thankful for. Our homes are not being bombed by the U.S. military, so that's nice. That's huge.
That would be, like,
yeah, I think what you said, I just related to.
I love that I ruin every party.
Fully, like, I am fortunate enough to have my girlfriend who I love so much. We live together, we're happy, and we have a life plan that we're working towards, where we're gonna go to college and get married one day and have a wonderful family and have a wonderful life, whether we be at the top of the pay scale or at the bottom. We're gonna make it work and we're gonna be happy. Because like everyone has said here, it's about the people around you. They matter so much more than anything else.
For me, especially like, in the last year or so, and the reason I said that it would be different if you'd asked me a little bit ago, I was, yes, working jobs that I loved, but a large part of me was committed to those jobs more than the rest of the other aspects of my life. So I was putting work over things, chasing a bigger paycheck, chasing a bigger payout, chasing a bigger accolade, chasing an achievement. And even though on the outside to everyone looking in, they were all like, Kai, you've made it, you're 22, you're doing all these cool things in social media, you're traveling the world, you're working with the biggest influencers, why aren't you happy? It was because there was a part of me that had put such a pedestal, or put money on such a pedestal at a young age of seeing it as this thing that once I have money, I'll be happy. And I just had denied myself happiness. I had kind of kept prolonging it further and further and said, oh, when I get to this point, I'll be happy. Oh, when I get to this point, I'll be happy. And that was kind of the question that I was going to ask was like, if happiness was like more of a sliding scale, would you say that you're 70% happy, and like would money change that?
A blessing, but it also can be a curse to the wrong people sometimes, because they start asking these questions, and if they don't get answered, that's what happens.
It magnifies your problem.
Because you're like, oh, I'll just keep making more. Like I never had like a bad problem with it, but I just like really asked these questions, and when I really internalized it, I was like, what is the metric for happiness? Like what decides if I'm happy? And I realized it came down to one simple thing. It was contentment. Like satisfaction and contentment. Yeah. And not just like with everything, but like if I died right now, would I be okay with it? Like with what I've done, with the time that I've spent, like the way that I'm gonna die, right? Not just about dying right now, like am I dying in a way that I'm proud of dying? And when I really thought about it, 2 years ago, I was like, oh, I'm doing this for money. And I had made this money, and I was like, okay, I don't want to do it for money anymore. Like, I want to do it for something else. This is not going to drive me anymore. And I realized, like, okay, cool, like, I've gone to a scale where I can take care of so many others. And if I keep crushing it, I can take care of more. So that's kind of like the contentment, where it's like, oh, cool. Even if I don't ever get to take care of like millions and millions of more people.
He really, that's why he wants to get so rich, guys. He wants to become a billionaire so he can take care of millions and millions of people. This is witness the common sense of capitalism. Witness the cultural hegemony of capitalism. Billionaires are good because they're philanthropic. If philanthropy worked, guys, it would have worked by now.
I'm in the process and pursuit of that, and I'm content with that.
I would almost say that I was happier back when I was working at Chick-fil-A and like being a paintball referee. Like, you know, sure there were like financial problems, but there was a part of me that didn't feel burdened down by like the weight of, you know, supporting so many other people. Yeah. Like there is that, you know, responsibility when you become higher up in society and you like have more people that report underneath you and there's more people that rely on you for their well-being and their family's well-being and, you know, their financial, where I do miss that part. Like I'll sit in bed some days and be like, man, I remember when life was so simple. And so it's those things that get taken for granted that I wish I would have learned when I was younger, and that maybe would have had me push less hard to earn more because I thought that it was going to fix my problems rather than working on fixing myself first.
You know, I'm actually glad that the both of y'all spoke before I did, because I resonated with that so much though, man. It was, you know, when I had like the bulk of my money, right, I gained a shit ton of weight. I didn't have to do shit. Like I'll just wake up to money, you know what I mean, right? I was real like, my ex, we was living together, and she used to say all the time, like, there was times when I was laying, like, I had gained a whole bunch of weight. I couldn't even see myself pee, bro. Like, it was nasty. like, legit. And my ex was like, baby, you got to get out for your ass, go do something. Yeah. And I was like, yo, I ain't got to, like, I don't have to do nothing. Like, we good, you know what I mean? But the whole thing was, I remember one day, my ex taught me about macronutrients, and then I was able to get in the best shape of my life. And that made me happy. Then she took us to a salsa class. I've been dancing salsa for the last 4 years. I found purpose in that. And my happiness more so comes from the purpose, like the purpose of doing things. Yes. You know what I mean, right? So although I don't have the bread that I used to have to do, I am.
Well, it's because you're lazy and you're poor.
Because I put myself out there and I make the most out of my situation.
Good talking to you, fellas.
Good chat.
Poor gang unite.
What about group hug?
Why are you in the middle?
Hug, guys. I did not want to be in the group hug. Okay, well there you go. In the past 6 months, I've been banned on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, Threads, TikTok, and now YouTube. This is 1000% because of my coverage of Israel's genocide against the Palestinians. In light of being demonetized on all these platforms, I've decided to start exclusively posting to Patreon, where you can sign up for all my posts and live streams for just $3 a month. Wow! In addition to having all access to my live streams, you'll also be in a group chat with yours truly.
Wow, that sounds awesome.
I've spent a considerable amount of time and effort trying to build audiences on these platforms only to have them swept away at a moment's notice, and that is pretty frustrating. But I want to say that I'm thankful and grateful for all of your support and kind words throughout all of this, and I hope to see you on these new platforms very soon.